Hello, everybody. Welcome to a daily dose of the Bible. We are in Genesis. Right now, we're reading about Jacob's early life as a follower of God. The last chapter had his first words that God had spoken to him, and vice versa. He had never, he was calling God his father's God, and here he says in the last chapter, if you do all these things and keep me safe, then certainly you'll be my God. And by the way, I will give you a tenth of everything that you give to me. So he's on his way to meet up with his brother, to visit his mother's brother, Laban, that'd be uncle, and try to find a wife over there. So he's had his first encounter with God, and now he's on his way to Padda-Aram. Then Jacob hurried on, finally arriving in the land of the east. He saw a well in the distance. There were flocks of sheep and goats that lay in the field beside it, waiting to be watered. But a heavy stone covered the mouth of the well. It was the custom there to wait for all the flocks to arrive before removing the stone and watering the animals. Afterward, the stone would be placed back over the mouth of the well. Jacob went over to the shepherds and asked, "Where are you from, my friends?" They answered, "We are from Haran." "Do you know a man there named Laban, the grandson of Nahor?" he asked. "Yes, we do," they replied. "Is he doing well?" Jacob asked. "Yes, he's well," they answered. "Look, here comes his daughter Rachel with the flock now." Jacob said, "Look, it's still broad daylight, too early to round up the animals. Why don't you water your sheep and goats so they can get back to the pasture?" "We can't water the animals until all the flocks have arrived," they replied. "Then the shepherds will move the stone from the mouth of the well, and we will water all the sheep and goats." Jacob was still talking to them when Rachel arrived with her father's flock, for she was a shepherd. And because Rachel was his cousin, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and because the sheep and goats belonged to his uncle Laban, Jacob went over to the well and moved the stone from its mouth and watered his uncle's flock. Then Jacob kissed Rachel, and he wept aloud. He explained to Rachel that he was her cousin on her father's side, the son of her aunt Rebekah. So Rachel quickly ran and told her father Laban. As soon as Laban heard the news that his nephew had arrived, he ran out to meet him, embraced him, and kissed him, and brought him home. When Jacob had told him the story, Laban exclaimed, "You really are my own flesh and blood." So that's pretty amazing that, he gets to the well, and there's his future wife right there. Not that we know that yet, but that's the next part. He breaks tradition and waters the sheep and goats of his uncle before everyone else, and it's just really cool the way it went down. It harkens back to Isaac and Rebecca. Yeah. She was the one who came to the well and gave water to the camels of the servant Rebecca was the one who watered Abraham's servant's camels, and then the servant knew that she was the person to take back, So here they are at a well again, and Jacob is meeting his future wife Rachel and, his cousin who he's been looking for their family. So it's very fortunate how that lined up. After Jacob had stayed with Laban for about a month, Laban said to him, "You shouldn't work for me with pay just because we are relatives. Without pay, just because we are relatives. Tell me how much your wages should be." Now Laban had 2 daughters. The older daughter was named Leah, and the younger one was Rachel. There was no sparkle in Leah's eye, but Rachel had a beautiful figure and a lovely face. Since Jacob was in love with Rachel, he told her father, "I'll work for you for 7 years if you give me Rachel, your daughter, as my wife." "Agreed," Laban replied. "I'd rather give her to you than anyone else." stay and work with me." So Jacob worked for 7 years to pay for Rachel, but his love for her was so strong that it seemed to him but a few days. Finally, the time came for him to marry her. "I have fulfilled my full agreement," Jacob said to Laban. "Now give me my wife so I can marry her." So Laban invited everyone in the neighborhood and prepared a wedding feast. But that night, when it was dark, Laban took Leah to Jacob, and he slept with her. Laban had given Leah a servant, Zilpah, to be her maid. But when Jacob woke up in the morning, it was Leah. "What have you done to me?" Jacob raged at Laban. "I worked for 7 years for Rachel. Why have you tricked me?" "It's not our custom to marry off a younger daughter ahead of a firstborn," Laban replied. "But wait until the bridal week is over, then I will give you Rachel too, provided you promise to work another 7 years for me." So Jacob agreed to work 7 more years. A week after Jacob married Leah, Laban gave him Rachel too. Laban gave Rachel a servant, Bilhah, to be her maid. So Jacob slept with Rachel too, and he loved her much more than Leah. He stayed and worked for Laban the additional 7 years. So poor Leah, her father tricks Jacob into marrying her. That is not very cool. And then he gets 7 more years of work out of Jacob. So these people are pretty crafty back then, you know, like I think about simple shepherds and such, but they are doing some things that I just am surprised to read. You know, trickery of his own nephew. "Oh, here, sleep with this daughter." Then, "Oh, sorry, take a week. It's just not the custom." Why didn't you say that before, Laban? Then, you know, maybe he would have just been like, "Okay, fine, I'll marry them both," instead of having to trick him. So, it's appalling, but you know what? It is the same thing that happens here every day in our current world, you know, and then some. So, finally, Jacob gets to marry his beloved Rachel, and Leah is part of the package, I guess. So, Jacob's many children. Wow, that's quiet. When the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, he enabled her to have children, but Rachel could not conceive. So Leah became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She named him Reuben, for she said, "The Lord has noticed my misery, and now my husband will love me." She soon became pregnant again and gave birth to another son, and she named him Simeon, for she said, "The Lord has heard that I was unloved and has given me another son." Then she became pregnant a 3rd time and gave birth to another son. She named him Levi, for she said, "Surely this time my husband will feel affection for me, since I have given birth to 3 sons." Once again, Leah became pregnant and gave birth to another son. She named him Judah, for she said, "Now I will praise the Lord." And then she stopped having children. Poor Leah. You know, there's so many women like her who depend upon their husband for the love that the Lord can provide. And, you know, it's tradition back then that your husband will give you children, and, you know, just, I don't know, just that she knew she was unloved. It's just like, couldn't he at least sort of love her? But I guess it was probably pretty apparent that he really was in love with Rachel all along, and Leah probably knew the deal. You know, Dad tricked him into marrying me, and now he's stuck with me. He doesn't have a choice, you know. So I guess he's just going to have to deal with the, you know, maybe he'll love me after these 4 children. Oh, nope, nothing has changed. But that's the beginning of the 12 tribes of Israel. And those are the first 4 tribes, you know. And through these people, just regular, ordinary sinners, just like you and me, God is going to raise up the nation of Israel. And he is going to bring his son to save and redeem us And the only way that he could figure was possible, dying on the cross to be the sacrifice for our sin. And this, you know, Genesis is the very beginning. I mean, you know, two-pronged, but it is the beginning of God's beautiful, wonderful plan. And I just pray that you'll take this into your heart and let it be the beginning for you, maybe, of God working in your life. You know, you might be just like Jacob or Laban or Abraham or Isaac, a sinner that God needs to, you know, work with you. He will work with you, whatever you have to offer, and show you so much more than you even knew was there. So I just pray that you will take this beginning as a jumping off point, and that you will set yourself on fire for the Lord. You know, pray for that deep-rooted Christianity, deep-rooted love of the Lord and all the things that He is all about. Just seek Him first, and everything will fall into place after that.